Hi, everyone. I am just back from Shanghai, China, where I participated as a judge in a global natural history competition that involved 4,000 kids from all over the world. An amazing program that permitted these kids to become more empowered through research that was done and lots of training, including a training to speak in their non-native language because the whole program was done in English, and including the question and answer sessions that followed each of the exhibits and performances. But I want to talk today about the man that created this program back in 2011 and in subsequent years, and funded it with millions and millions of dollars. The man's name is Ken Behring, and I want to just tell you a little bit about him because it's a fascinating story here. First, Ken Behring just transitioned a month ago. He was supposed to go on the trip with us, but just before the trip, we left on the 15th of July. He transitioned. He was age 91. So I learned about him through his family, his wife, and his three of his sons that were on this trip with me to Shanghai, China. He is somebody who pursued the American dream from the time that he was a young man. He was a child born into a Depression era home and grew up in Monroe, Wisconsin. His parents didn't have much vision or ambition. And so he was kind of left on his own to figure out how he was going to develop himself into a successful and happy person. And then in his early years, he had every kind of job imaginable. Then in his teens, he opened a auto dealership, a Behring auto dealership that became quite successful. He applied to the University of Wisconsin for a scholarship, a football scholarship. He won the scholarship, but then he was injured playing football in college, so he had to drop out because he didn't have the funds to continue his education at the University of Wisconsin without the scholarship. So he moved to Florida, and he got into property development in Florida, and became the largest developer of homes in Florida. Developed two huge communities down there, and then he moved to California, where he developed two enormous communities in Northern California. All of this permitted him to create incredible financial wealth. In the late 1980s, he bought the Seattle Seahawks football team using the wealth he'd created from property development. And he owned the Seattle Seahawks football team for a good number of years before he sold it to Paul Allen, whose estate owns the team even to today. Now, the interesting thing about this man, Ken Behring, is that he became a billionaire through these endeavors of his, but he shared that he didn't find real joy in life until he started giving away wheelchairs. He created a wheelchair foundation when he was about 70 years old, and started giving away wheelchairs all over the world. He would create a container, which would have about 120 wheelchairs, and he'd take 1 to 10 containers to these different locations all over the world, and he'd give independence and mobility to people that didn't yet have a wheelchair, and that also freed up the families to do other things because they'd been just carrying around these members of the family until they were given their wheelchair. And Ken Behring shared that he didn't experience real joy until he started giving away these wheelchairs. And he had was found incredible meaning and purpose in this, so much so that he expanded his charitable giving to all kinds of other things, including this Global Natural History Day and this competition that he created that starts at a local level in communities all over the world, and then it goes to a regional level, and then people participate at a national level, and then finally in the international program. This year it was in Shanghai, China, and I just came back actually a day and a half ago from this program. Ken Behring said that his best years were from age 70 to 90. Why? Because he found real joy in opening his heart to people, first people that needed a wheelchair, then youth that wanted to become empowered, participating in these Natural History Day programs, and other charitable pursuits as well. So I wanted to tell you about Ken Behring because he's a living example of what we talk about in Humanities Team, that this old American dream of just pursuing financial success is hollow. It doesn't bring real joy. And here's a man who became a billionaire and owned a mansion as a home, exotic cars, and even an NFL football team, but didn't find real joy until later in his life when he started giving. And of course, our within Humanities Team, the thing that we're always emphasizing is that once we see ultimate reality as it is, our connection to others, and then connection always brings personal responsibility. So we become responsible for humanity and the earth. And then when we become responsible, that always brings positive action or service, where we want to naturally help people and help the earth and life on earth. That's where we find true satisfaction. That's when we find our place. That's when we live in ultimate reality in a way that brings true happiness and joy. And that's when we become self-realized. So here's a man, now a family, the Behring family, that's carrying on his legacy of giving. And though some of the family members would speak about it spiritually as I am, others would not. But in both cases, they've found that real happiness and real joy come through service to each other and the world around us. So I'll send out a communication here shortly that will talk more about this trip, including these incredible 4,000 kids that we interacted with when we were in Shanghai this year. Okay, thank you for spending a moment with me, and peace and blessings and love.